This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Between two-factor authentication, strong passwords, and a VPN, you try to be in control of how your info is protected. But many other places also have it, and they might not be as careful. That's why LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit lifelock.com/podcast for 40% off. Terms apply.
Your burger is served, and this is our finest Pepsi Zero Sugar. Its sweet profile perfectly balances the savory notes of your burger.
That is one perfect combination. Burgers deserve Pepsi.
Choice Hotels get you more for your money so you can maximize any road trip. And as your vacation maximizationer, I'm going to make sure you hear the maximum sizzle of Comfort Inn's free hot breakfast. Let's get real close. Maximum apple. Now that's fresh crispimization. Maximum waffle. Hear that crunch. And that's maximum coffee. Oh yeah, that's the pour I'm talking about. Breakfast maximized before hitting the road. Check into more. Book direct at choicehotels.com.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Commercial Insurance. Business owners, meet Progressive Insurance. They make it easy to get discounts on commercial auto insurance and find coverages to grow with your business. Quote in as little as 6 minutes at progressivecommercial.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company. Coverage provided and serviced by affiliated and third-party insurers. Discounts and coverage selections not available in all states or situations.
Mic check. 1, 2. Are we recording? Hi, I'm Michelle Bernstein, an award-winning chef, restaurateur, and mom. I have a lot on my plate, including my psoriatic arthritis symptoms. That's why I was prescribed Cosentyx. It helps me move better.
Cosentyx secukinumab is prescribed for people 2 years of age and older with active psoriatic arthritis. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting, get checked for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur, like tuberculosis or other serious bacterial, fungal, or viral infections. Some were fatal. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if inflammatory bowel disease symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions and severe eczema-like skin reactions may occur. Learn more at 1-844-COSENTYX or Cosentyx.com.
Ask your rheumatologist about Cosentyx.
On WhatsApp, no one can see or hear your personal messages. Whether it's a voice call, message, or sending a password. To WhatsApp, it's all just this. So whether you're sharing the streaming password in the family chat or trading those late-night voice messages that could basically become a podcast, your personal messages stay between you, your friends, and your family. No one else. Not even us. WhatsApp. Message privately with everyone.
This episode is brought to you by Greenlight. Get this. Adults with financial literacy skills have 82% more wealth than those who don't. From swimming lessons to piano classes, us parents invest in so many things to enrich our kids' lives. But are we investing in their future financial success? With Greenlight, you can teach your kids financial literacy skills like earning, saving, and investing. And this investment costs less than that after-school treat. Start prioritizing their financial education and future today with a risk-free trial at greenlight.com/Spotify. Greenlight.com/Spotify.
This episode is brought to you by Polestar. There's only one true way to experience the all-electric luxury SUV Polestar 3, and that's to take a test drive. It can go from 0 to 60 in as little as 4.8 seconds with the dynamic handling of a sports car. But to truly understand how it commands the road, you need to be behind the wheel. Up to 350 miles of range, the 3D surround sound system by Bowers & Wilkins. It's all something you have to experience to believe. So book your test drive for Polestar 3 today at polestar.com.
If you went on a road trip and you didn't stop for a Big Mac or drop a crispy fry between the car seats or use your McDonald's bag as a placemat, then that wasn't a road trip. It was just a really long drive. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
At participating McDonald's.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Welcome to the HCI family of podcasts. We're your source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development. We share our own original research, explore industry trends, and interview executives and thought leaders from across the globe. Join us for practitioner-oriented content around all things leadership, HR, talent management, organizational development, and change management. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with the HCI family of podcasts. Daniel Oppong, welcome to the conversation today.
John, thanks for me. Good to be with you.
It is a pleasure to be with you. You're joining us from Austin, Texas. I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah. And today we're going to be talking about the challenges and obstacles to creating lasting DEI change in the workplace. This is something I'm very passionate about. We were talking just in the pre-interview about, not only, how important the topic is, but also challenges, the inherent kind of bureaucratic and institutional challenges in organizations, but also we happen to be in two of the states politically that are facing legislative challenges. So Texas and Utah, along with Florida, are probably three of the states in the country that are facing some of the biggest legislative challenges around DEI work. So all of this just leads to, I think, what will be a really fascinating, great discussion on the topic. As we get started, I wanted to share Daniel's bio with everybody. Daniel Oppong is the founder of the Courage Collective, a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultancy that takes a strategic, holistic, and human-centered approach to DEI work. He is also the founder of Boundless, a platform designed to create access for Black and Brown folks pursuing careers, opportunities in marketing, consulting, and tech. I think that's wonderful. Daniel, anything you would like to add by way of your background or personal context before we dive on in?
Yeah, kind of an untraditional path into the work that I'm doing now. Got my start in the nonprofit sector, working with college students. And then I went and got a master's in organizational leadership at Gonzaga University. From there,
that's a great program.
Yeah, it was good. I really enjoyed it. Pacific Northwest is beautiful as well. And so had a good time with that. And then I moved to Nashville to work in venture capital, which is kind of funny because I'd never heard of venture capital, didn't know what it was. And then I got a gig as head of people at a VC fund, a healthcare focused VC fund, which was pretty impactful for my career. And so that led me then, did that for about 4 years, and then worked in the employee experience space. And so kind of a windy, untraditional path to the space that I'm in, but I think really more than anything, I get excited about empowering companies to create cultures where people thrive. And so that's what led me to my work today.
Yeah, well, I will say, I think the DEI field, the DEI area often is a zigzag path for a lot of people.
That's
so
right.
That tracks, that makes a lot of sense. And honestly, what you just described seems like actually a pretty logical path to me. To get there, and I think your work in employee experience seems to make perfect sense to me to lead to this. For example, okay, let's dive on in and start to explore, kind of your views on the current state of DEI in corporate America. I referred to some of the political backlash, particularly in places like Texas, Florida, Texas, Utah. We've seen political backlash, legislative backlash. It's certainly not unique to our areas, though. I mean,
Right.
Nationally, there's also backlash, right? And so we've seen that filter into corporate settings. How do you? What's your take on that? Like, what's the current state of DEI in corporate America, given the kind of tinderbox politically?
Yeah, it's an interesting time to be in this space. I'd say the moment is particularly fraught in a lot of ways. I think about Newton's third law, where he says, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, right? And if we look at 2020, that was a year of action.
Yeah.
And what has followed has been the equal and opposite reaction. And I think that tracks throughout history. It's totally predictable. Anytime there have been advances through the lens of social justice, there's typically pushback and the equal and opposite reaction. So I think we're in that moment now, looking at things like Supreme Court overturning affirmative action being one, and then all of the companies rolling back some of their programming focused on DE&I, and then the legislation against or people filing litigation against companies that are practicing DE&I. And so I think this moment is totally predictable. And it's also unfortunate because for me, it highlights the surface level action that was taken by many organizations, or it wasn't really done in a substantive and holistic and meaningful way. And as such, when there's pushback, many companies have backed off what they said was really important. And now we're kind of in this moment where there's a lot of opportunity, but I think there's also a lot of apathy, ambivalence, and just pushback in general.
Yeah, I agree. And because of the tinderbox, the political challenges and fraughtness of it all, those companies that weren't really all that committed to it, their first reaction is to just like back away, right? Like completely just back away from it. And my take is completely in line with yours. Like I think there were so many organizations that I don't think had any real commitment to it in the wake of kind of George Floyd, and a lot of that stuff that happened in the summer of 2020. There was a tremendous amount of public social pressure for organizations to respond in some way, right?
Correct.
Employees expected them to respond. Consumers expected them to respond. And so you had companies putting out statements. You had them all of a sudden establishing positions of like a corporate, a chief diversity officer or committees or whatever. You had all these things happening very rapidly in a lot of corporations. And to your point, I think for a lot of organizations, it was very, very surface level stuff.
For sure.
That wasn't, didn't actually demonstrate a whole lot of real commitment. In many ways, I think that led to the backlash because there wasn't the deep work that needed to be done in order to like generate the buy-in and the commitment throughout the organizations. And so people that weren't feeling connected to it, didn't have the buy-in to it. They just felt threatened by it, which then led to more of the backlash to it, and pendulum swings, right?
It's been pretty cyclical, right? I mean, I think just the reality when companies took an action in response to public pressure, to your point, there wasn't really the substance and really the investment in making it something substantial, right? And so, I mean, if we look at other business functions, right, take product, take your services, take marketing, take business development. Those aren't things that companies just do half-heartedly. There's a lot of investment. There's buy-in from leaders on the value and the impact, right? And I think one of the things that most companies miss if they just take a, let's call it program-based or topical approach to DE&I, like the demographics in the world are shifting, right? And because of that, different employees are coming into the workplace, the consumer base is shifting. And so for companies who aren't considering the reality of the shifting demographics of the world, and they say, oh, well, this isn't actually important to our business, they're going to miss a whole chunk of the consumer market. They're actually going to miss being able to meaningfully connect with certain employees who are coming into their workplace. So I think there's a little bit of a misnomer about what it is and what it isn't, right? Equity and inclusion work. And as such, I think companies deprioritize it because probably to some degree, they may not have deeply understood what actually the work is in the first place.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. So let's go there. Like if the pendulum swung one way and then it swung back, and now, we see this political backlash, for example, that's something that deeply frustrates me here in the state of Utah.
Sure.
I'm a university professor as well as, someone who does consulting work. And so, I see it firsthand in the university space because our legislature passed a whole bunch of laws that, are targeting universities because they see us as mills of woke ideology, right? Like,
right.
And so, I'm very concerned. I'm very concerned for what this means for the higher education space. And, for the first time, I'm really considering, is this a place I'm going to stay? Like, I don't want to stay, in an environment where I don't actually have academic freedom, where I don't actually where I'm being censored in what I can say and what I can teach and like what I can do research in and whatever. And that's kind of where it seems like it's going, so that's a concern I have, but I also have real concerns about like the actual work of like the important work of doing diversity, equity, inclusion stuff that's going to be impactful to organizations and help marginalized communities, etc. Yeah, like with the pendulum swings back and forth, like do you see an opportunity in the near future for like a level set, like a pendulum swing back where we can like balance out, or do you feel like we're still in this backswing where we still have to weather that storm for a while?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think throughout history, it has been pretty cyclical. So when you see advances, there's typically the pushback. And I think when I look at what's ahead for the industry, my guess is that there will be continued pushback. I think the election will be interesting as it pertains to the rhetoric and how we're thinking about kind of inclusion more broadly. But then I also think the industry will probably reinvent itself in different ways. Maybe it's different language, maybe it's a different branding or title as it pertains to DEI. But regardless, like I said, I mean, what we think about as DEI work is like, how do we prioritize the human experience at work? And I think most companies would posit that that is important to them. And so maybe it's existed under the brand of DEI, but I think that aspect is still going to be important. And so we'll see how this particular moment kind of plays out. I do think there's going to be continued attacks. There's going to be continued litigation. And I think there are going to be companies that really live their values and continue to prioritize it and talk about the work that they're doing, which we're also seeing as well.
Yeah, so if that's the case, as we try to continue to prioritize it, what would you say are some of the best ways that we can, positively prioritize it to make the types of lasting change that I think you and I would hope for, that, many people in the space are hoping for long term?
Yeah, we typically distill, when we think about DNI, we typically distill it down to these 4 A's. So acknowledgement, acceptance, affirmation, and appreciation. So the acknowledgement of difference, the acceptance of difference, the affirmation of difference, and the appreciation of difference. All of those things, I think, help demystify this kind of black box of what it might be and what it could be. And so we think about those things operationalized. We're looking at organizations and saying, okay, how can you engage the unique identities that are in your organization? There's a difference between the idea that we're just welcoming everyone into the org, and then the idea of this was intentionally created with your uniqueness in mind. And that's what we're aspiring to, right? So we help organizations think through across the employee journey, how are you prioritizing the human experience at work, whether that is program development, whether that is investment in growth and development opportunities for people, whether that is looking at across the board to see if compensation, for example, is equitable based upon identity, tenure, et cetera. Like there's so many different ways that it shows up that goes beyond a simple training or, what people would say DEI hiring. Those things are, for me, less material. It's more like, how are you considering the identities in your org and how are you investing to make sure that everyone is thriving? And what our research has shown is that individuals experience organizations in different ways depending on identities that they hold. And so I think that's just something that we have to name, help organizations consider, and then help them design both strategies and programs that really meet their people in a meaningful and effective way.
Yeah. I think that's great. And one thing, I think organizations are really going to have to do in order to accomplish what you were just suggesting, is to take a real step back and consider deeply, their core values, how those align with their overarching strategy, and then get people around the table to have some deep conversations around what one thing that we need to avoid is tokenization.
Right.
We need to avoid putting all of the pressure of the work on people of color, for example. That's something that often happens. I'm a straight cisgender white dude, and so I want to try to be an ally wherever I can. I also want to try to help take the burden off of people who might often have the burden placed on them to do this work wherever possible, while also, I also recognize sometimes it's a little bit of a fine line. Like I don't want to like overstep. I also don't want to like speak for other people. I don't
Sure.
want to, like it is a little tricky. And I understand that's why sometimes people don't want to wade into the conversation because they just feel like it's not my place, or I don't want to speak for other people, or I don't want to overstep or whatever. But don't allow, you don't want to allow those fears to keep you out of the dialogue.
Right.
And so I think being inclusive in the conversations to make sure that you have a good representation around the table to explore, like, what can these things look like,
That's right.
is going to be super, super important. And I think that's partly why there's been some backlash, perhaps, in many organizations. It's frustrating. Let me say it this way. It's frustrating to me that I hear a lot of people like me. I hear from a lot of straight cisgender white dudes who talk about that they feel like they are being discriminated against.
Sure.
That's part of the backlash, right? That they feel like they are being discriminated against, when in reality, all that's happening is that in some ways their privilege has been challenged in some way.
Right.
And so they're not being discriminated against, but in some ways the world that has been built for them, the systems that have been built for them, are now being equalized, or there are being other opportunities created for people that haven't had the same privileges that they've had all their lives. And so, but I hear that constantly. I hear that
Sure.
in the circles I run in all the time, that other straight cisgender white dudes are feeling it, and that's a big part of the backlash, right?
Yeah, I think so. But two things I would say to that. Number one, it's not a zero-sum game. I think the
No,
idea
of course not. Yeah.
right? I think the idea that one person experiencing a more equitable organization or a more equitable society means that it inherently takes from someone else, like, that is a misnomer. And so I think we live in a society where so much has been reduced to it being a zero-sum game. If one person advances, that means I'm threatened. That doesn't have to be the case. So I think that is the first thing. And then I think the second thing we have to consider is, like, when we look back on the genesis of programs like this in the first place, the reason why they existed is because certain people, certain identities weren't experiencing society, culture, life in a more equitable fashion. And so
Right.
some of these programs were set in place to help acknowledge and right the inequities of the past. And so to me, like, if we lived in an equitable society, there likely wouldn't be any need for equity and inclusion programs in the first place. But because we do not, that is the genesis. And so to me, I think it's a major misnomer. It's not a zero-sum game. And then I think also they need to exist in order to help create equity and parity where there hasn't been.
I 100% agree. Which is why I get so frustrated when I hear that argument.
Totally.
And yet those are persistent arguments, right?
Sure.
And politically, like in the political realm, it's one of the reasons why the pushback happens and why the argument persists. And so, I think we have to gently continue to push back, and why I think in particular, it's one thing for a person of color or someone who's LGBT or whatever, pick whatever group. It's one thing for them to push back on that argument, and I think they can be readily dismissed. I think, right? But I need to push back on those arguments. I think that is where it has to happen, because if I'm not pushing back, they can still dismiss me. They can say I'm some, like, woke liberal or whatever. They can throw around those terms, but I think I have a better chance of, like, pushing back and making the argument and trying to say what you just said in hopefully a way that they maybe can hear, hopefully. And ultimately, my desire is not to, I don't want to discriminate against anybody. Like, I want everybody to thrive. I want everybody to have opportunity. I want everyone to have amazing experiences in the workplace. I want everyone to fulfill their potential. That is my goal. And the reality is society has been set up in such a way, and workplace systems have been set up in such a way that it has disproportionately benefited certain groups, and it has disproportionately negatively disadvantaged other groups.
That's right.
And that's why we have all of this to try to fix it and to try to make things better. And that's all we're trying to do. And the pendulum swings back and forth. I agree. I think we'll continue to see shifts. We'll continue to see adjustments. I remain cautiously optimistic, and I think I think we have to maintain some optimism. We have to continue to fight and put the effort forward to try to make positive change. And I believe that positive change can have the impact that we want over time.
Sure.
But it's going to take continued effort, and there's no way around that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it takes all of us. Everyone has their own sphere of influence, and I think in order to see a more equitable society, for people to feel a sense of belonging, I think everyone is required to make that happen. So I agree with you.
Well, this has been a fun conversation. I wish we had like 2 more hours.
Yeah, right.
But I know at the time I'm going to have to let you go. But before we wrap things up, I wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, your team, and then give us a final word on the topic for today.
Sure. Yeah. So you can find our website, thecouragecollective.co. You can also find us on LinkedIn, and then you can find my personal LinkedIn, Daniel Oppong. So those are the easiest places to find us. As far as our work goes, yeah, I mean, I think high level, we help companies prioritize the human experience at work and substantiate some of the items that we've been talking about today. So for us, that looks like talent management strategy, people development, learning and development. Those are some of the areas where we focus on. And so I think as it pertains to this topic specifically, my hope is that we can continue to focus on the world we want to create, less on the things that we're looking to continue to deconstruct. Like, what does this better world look like that we're aspiring to? And what does it look like to actually create companies and cultures where people thrive? And so I think that's the challenge / opportunity in front of all of us. And so hopefully everyone will do their part to make that possible.
I love that. I love that optimism. Great way to end. Thank you so much, Daniel. It's been a real pleasure. I encourage the audience to reach out, to get connected, find out more about what Daniel can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the podcast. We hope you stay healthy and safe, and please join us again soon.